Hey everybody, it's Jason with Hurco Applications again. Welcome to another video on Hurco's solid model import feature. In this video, we're going to go over a little bit more on how to move part zero and how to align your model with how you're going to fixture your part in the machine. So to start, let's go ahead and deal a little bit with moving part zero. In previous videos, we've mentioned that this is one of the most important steps when working with the solid model or DXF or 3D DXF options. This is because all these data blocks are going to be created based on this part zero. So you want to make sure you have that where you want it on the part and on a, very accurately on a feature, either endpoint, midpoint, or that kind of thing. So let's show you a couple things with that. We're going to utilize this model that you've seen in previous videos. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to move part zero around a little bit, show you some of the ways we can work with that. To start with, we're going to utilize the move part zero. And to make sure that we're getting the points that we want, you typically always want to use your snap to object when working with your move part zero. So I'm going to make sure that's turned on, and I'm going to just choose endpoint. You can see here on the model that our part zero is in the center of the part and on the bottom. To start with, I'm just going to move it up to one of these corners. I'm just very simply going to tell it I want to move part zero. And with my snap on, I'm just simply going to select the point that I want my new part zero to be. So very simple means of moving my part zero. And by using the snap, I know that I'm sitting right on that corner. If I wanted to put it, say up in another corner, just simply move part zero and select that corner. Now my part zero is up there. That's where all my data blocks information is going to be referenced. Just for example, if I wanted to choose the center of one of these holes or a bore as my part zero, it's going to be the exact same process. I'm simply going to go into move part zero. However, this time I'm going to change my snap object to the center point. So I'll go ahead and select that, and let's just say I select this hole up here. You can now see that I have my part zero sitting in the center of that hole. So very easy means of just pointing, clicking, and moving part zero where you want it. You may also notice when I bring up the move part zero that we have these fields at the bottom of the screen where we can actually give it the values that we want to enter. So I'm going to go ahead and undo what we've done so far. Put this back where it was. And if you remember from the previous videos, we have a 6-inch long part in X, 4-inch in Y, and 2-inch thick. So knowing that, I can very easily give it the exact numbers that I want to move my part zero as well. To do that, I'm just simply going to click on move part zero and then just come down to these fields. I will move it -3 inches in X. I will do -2 inches in Y, and let's move it up 2 inches in Z. When I hit apply, you'll notice that now my part zero is sitting on what would be the corner of the stock. Another way of doing this would have been to simply go in and do this in multiple steps. I could do move part zero, make sure endpoint is selected for snap, move it to that corner, and then just simply select move part zero again, and then move it up a couple inches in the Z direction. So you can move your part zero in multiple steps if needed, and there are times where that is very beneficial or the easiest means of getting part zero where you want it. So now that we've dealt with moving part zero, which is a relatively easy process, however very important, let's deal with aligning our model to how we are going to have this part fixtured in the machine. In previous videos, we've assumed we were on a 5-axis or multi-axis machine. Now we're going to kind of look at this as if I'm working on a 3-axis machine and I'm going to fixture my part as it needs to be in the machine and come at it, just as you would on a 3-axis machine. Well, in order to do that, we have to change the orientation of our part inside of the software here. So to do that, we're going to utilize the move part zero and a couple other features that we have down here. And I'm going to start with the surface alignment. The first thing I want to do is I want to work on this plane over here where we've got this contour with the pockets. So if I want to bring that surface up, so I fixtured it as though this is flat with the z-axis of the machine, I'm simply going to move my part 0 to this corner to start with, where I want it on the part. Again, make sure my snap is on, and I'll just go ahead and put it in that corner. Now that I have part 0 where I want it, I'm now going to align this surface. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and select the surface alignment option here. And you'll see in the conversational area, it is going to ask me to select a point on the x-axis. So I'll just go ahead with snap on, select that point, and then it's going to ask me to select a point on the y-axis or a flat z surface. So I'll just go ahead and select that. You'll notice that my part rotated. If I go into the XY view, you can see I'm now looking straight down on that surface as it is now fixtured in the machine. A couple things to make note of when you are using the surface alignment is it is looking for the positive direction in the X and Y. So in this case here, I happen to move my part 0 right to a good location. That may not always be where you want your part 0. So it is very common when using surface alignment to move your part 0 someplace convenient to start with, then align your part, and then move your part 0 again to where you actually want it on that part. So in this case here, I could go ahead and get this surface aligned or the model aligned the way I want it, and then I could always just come back in and move my origin or part 0 where I wanted it on the part. So it's very common to kind of take this at a multiple step approach just to make it a little easier to work with. To go through that process one more time, I'm just going to go ahead and undo this. Back to the beginning here, and I'll work through orienting this left side. So I think to start with, I'm just going to go ahead and move my part 0 to this corner, again, so I can have the positive X and Y direction when I do my surface alignment. I will then select surface alignment, select the positive X direction, and then Y direction. And if I go into my XY view, you can see we're now oriented. However, I may not want that to be my part 0. I think I'm going to try to put it right in the center of this surface that we just oriented to. So to do that, again, I'm going to take a multiple step approach. I think I'll go in, I'm going to tell it I want to move my part 0. I'm going to switch my snap options to midpoint so I can get the midpoint or the center of this line. So I've moved it to that point there. Now I want to move it up to the center of this surface. To do that, I'm just going to hit move part 0 again. I know that that is a 4-inch long part. So if I move it 2 inches in Y and apply that, I now have my part 0 right in the center of the surface we're working with. So kind of a real world approach to moving your part 0 and aligning your part. The move part 0 and surface alignment is probably going to be the most common means of orienting your part. However, we do have a couple other options that we'll talk about here real quick. Let me undo what we've done. And we'll go in and work with a couple others. The first one we're going to talk about is this quick planar transform. This is one that, to be honest, probably won't be used all that often, but there are times where it can be handy. And the first thing you'll notice is it's grayed out. It's not allowing me to select it. When we were moving part 0, we were physically moving the part 0. Now we're going to be transforming or translating the stock, the model that's on the screen. So in order to do that, I need to select that geometry. I'm going to make sure my visible only is deselected. I want to grab everything on the screen here. I can do that either with a window select box or a Control A on your keyboard. That will select everything on the screen. So we'll go ahead and select that. And you'll notice it is now able to be selected. If by chance you didn't see that, make sure your snap to object is on. You'll notice that if I turn this off, it's no longer allowing me to select that. Because we are now moving geometry, and the software knows that we're machinists here. We're not dealing in general numbers. We need exact points. It's not going to allow us to transform, rotate, or anything without exact points or exact numbers. So it is going to force us to use our snap to object. That way we can't do something that we can't really replicate easily on the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Now we see that the quick planar transform is active. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. The first thing it's going to ask is to select the center of transformation. Typically, you're going to use your part 0 or a corner of the part, something like that. I want to use my part 0 here. So I'm going to go into my snap options and set the drop-down point here to point, which is what you're going to select if you ever want to select your part 0. So I'm just setting this to point. I'll go ahead and select that point. And this is going to bring up the quick planar transform box. Essentially what we are doing here is transforming or almost replacing one axis with another. So if we think about what we've got here, we're telling it that I know I'm using the wrong hand here, but we've got our x-axis and our y-axis and the z-axis. And basically, I want to go get to the front of this part. So when I rotate down, I want x to be x, but I want the y to be the z-axis. I just kind of want to swap those two axes. So if I go in here, I'm going to go ahead and set this to YZ. And now when I go to my XY view, you can now see we're looking at the front of the part. And it looks like I swapped those axes there, select the wrong option. But it does give you an easy way to just kind of jump from side to side on your part. Where this gets to be a little confusing is knowing which those axes to select, and you can always just kind of select them and see the way it turns out. But we have a little bit easier option that we'll go talk about next. So let me go ahead and undo this. Put us right back where we were. Again, I'm going to go in and select all my geometry, either with Control A or a select box. And this time I'm going to use the transform option. When you select transform, it's still going to ask for the center of transformation. I'm going to select my part 0. And now you'll notice that it's going to bring up all these handles on your gnomon. These handles allow you to physically grab and rotate or translate your stock. So if I knew that I wanted to rotate, let's say around the x-axis here, I could grab this and physically rotate my stock to where I wanted it on the screen. You'll notice that it's going to snap to every 45 degrees. So I could just drag that where I want, hit approve. Now if I go to my XY view, you can see that I have rotated the part there. Go ahead and undo that again. A couple other things with the transform. Get my part 0 selected here. Be careful. Not only can you rotate, you can also translate or drag your part. So make sure that if you're doing this, this is something that you want to do. Another thing with that is if you know the exact dimensions or the angles that you want to rotate or transform, we can enter those as well the same way we did move part 0. So if I go in, select everything again. Select the transform. You'll notice down at the bottom we have X, Y, Z, A, B, C. So for any of you that have any experience with our 5-axis machines, you know that when you are dealing with angles, that the A rotates around X, B rotates around Y, and C rotates around Z. So if I knew I wanted to go in here and rotate around the Y-axis of this part, I could just come in and say I want to rotate around the B angle, let's say 90 degrees. And when I apply that, you'll see that I rotated the part. If I go into XY view, I now have this left side facing the spindle. So you can always accurately orient your work that way. This is also what you're going to have to do if you need something either smaller or larger than 45 degrees, or anything that's not 45 degrees. You remember when you were rotating manually that it snapped to every 45 degrees. So obviously if you're not trying to get to something that equals a multiple of 45, you are going to have to type that value in. But pretty simple way of kind of reorienting your part, along with the other tools, the quick planar transform and the move part 0. We got quite a few tools here to help you move part 0 and align that part to how it's going to be in your machine. I hope you found this video useful. Please look for future videos on the topic.